Oscar nominee Russell Crowe shares the Roman Colosseum with savage beasts in that scene from Gladiator. It's one of 5 new movies we'll review this week, and I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Joyce Kilhaywick, film critic for WBZ-TV in Boston.
Our first movie is Gladiator, and this one is a real disappointment, a movie that's been photographed in such a dark, dingy, and drab visual style that the energy just drains out of every shot. At the beginning of the film, you want to see some excitement. At the end, you want to see some daylight. As the movie opens, Russell Crowe plays the victorious General Maximus, who's chosen by Emperor Marcus Aurelius, played by Richard Harris, to end corruption in Rome. It's quite an honor, but the Emperor's son Commodus, played by Joaquin Phoenix, gnashes his teeth with jealousy.
Our powers will pass to Maximus, to hold in trust until the Senate is ready to rule once more. Rome is to be a republic again.
Maximus is left for dead by a vengeful Commodus and is later made a slave and transported to Africa, where he comes under the power of Proximo, a manager of gladiators, who was played by the late Oliver Reed, who died during the filming of this picture.
Win the crowd, and you'll win your freedom.
I will win the crowd. I will give them something they've never seen before.
Gladiating is Maximus's ticket back to Rome, where the Colosseum is run like a Roman version of professional wrestling.
Caesar is proud to give you alias Maximus.
Maximus becomes the all-vanquishing hero, and that leads to a showdown with the insecure Commodus.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix legions, loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius.
Even though Gladiator was directed by Ridley Scott, who's famous for his special effects, the film has a murky look, and the Colosseum, partially created by computer animation, looks especially unconvincing. The actors do what they can, but the dialogue undermines them, and sometimes the parallels with the World Wrestling Federation seem almost deliberate, as when a tribune announces, "Caesar is happy to present the only undefeated champion in Roman history, the legendary Titus." Give me a break. One other thing, Gladiator thinks that when the Romans wanted somebody to live, they signaled with thumbs up. Actually, live was signaled by a thumb inside the fist. An extended thumb in any direction meant death. But nobody in this movie knows this, and that's good for Maximus.
You know, who cares? I don't think it matters. It's hard to even know where to begin here. I thought this was one of the best movies I've ever seen. I thought this was one of the best movies of the year.
Ever seen?
And you make this film
of the
sound
year?
Of the year easily. You make it sound frivolous. There's nothing frivolous about this movie.
This doesn't have any depth. It doesn't have any juice.
Is eloquent. The story grabs you from the beginning. It is visualized in a way that Ridley Scott is known for, where he reinvented the future in Blade Runner. He gives us an authentic, fresh take on the past here. It is not murky, and wherever it is murky, it serves the battle sequences.
It is very,
Russell Crowe,
dark.
An actor of tremendous, charismatic, towering power. He has a kind of intensity and eloquence that we haven't seen, I think, since Richard Burton, and he also reminds me of Anthony Hopkins. And the characters here, Joaquin Phoenix, Commodus, the complexity of this character. The man is a monster. He's the monster he knows that his father's going to become.
It's my turn.
But
Commodus
we feel
is
sympathy
absolutely
for him.
transparent compared to somebody like Nero in Quo Vadis, played by Peter Ustinov.
My heart broke for him. This film succeeds in every way, on every level, and I have to say I'm shocked at what you have to say about it.
Absolutely doesn't. Did you see Titus?
Yes, I saw Titus.
Shames this movie.
No.
Let me talk. Titus shames this movie. It shames it. It shames it in the look, in the drama, in the characterizations, in the performances, in the depth. This movie is basically just a gladiator movie.
Titus and her work, as a matter of fact. It's a very unique vision, but it certainly wasn't as dramatically compelling as this. And the characters didn't have this kind of complexity. And the language here, you cannot make fun of the language. It was extraordinarily compelling.
I actually prefer Shakespeare's language.
5 minutes, I was writing things down because it was
you've gotta make fun.
This is no Technicolor toga party held on some Hollywood back lot. This is a fine
We
piece
have a
of
major
filmmaking.
disappointment and
We have a
disagreement.
major disagreement here.
Okay.
We certainly do. Our next movie, Up at the Villa, is based on the novella by W. Somerset Maugham and is set in 1938 Florence and the surrounding Tuscan countryside. Penniless English widow Mary Panton, played by Kristen Scott Thomas, is staying at a luxurious villa courtesy of a dwindling circle of Anglo-American expatriates who cling to their extravagant lives despite the threat of war and fascism. As the film opens, Mary considers the marriage proposal of the wealthy, older, and connected Sir Edgar Swift. He's leaving town for a few days and is concerned about her safety.
I don't want to frighten you, Mary, but I must speak up. Regardless of what happens between you and I want you to consider leaving Italy quite soon. The hostility that we met with on the road last night merely confirms what I've already heard.
While Mary's thinking it over, enters Sean Penn, glaringly miscast as the rakish American and married playboy Rollie Flint.
You can't possibly imagine what it feels like to be dependent on other people's generosity.
No, I can't. But I do know what a loveless marriage is like. I know what that feels like and what that does.
Aroused after rebuffing Rollie's advances, Mary takes pity on poor young Austrian refugee Carl Richter, played by Jeremy Davies, in a surprisingly complex role.
It's Viennese waltz.
Can you dance?
Yes, I can do that. At least better than I play violin.
Let me see.
After ensuing complications, Rollie tries to convince Mary to run off with him.
I love you. Isn't that enough?
The answer is no. If Sean Penn were Cary Grant, we could understand how Mary might run off with an American who promised romance and freedom from a world about to collapse. But Penn is stilted and thug-like and for once seems ill at ease. That throws off the whole love triangle. Sir Edgar, who is meant to seem the stifling choice, instead seems a refuge from both the impending political storm and the careless pleasures that Penn's Lothario promises. Scott Thomas, on the other hand, is ideal as a passionate, refined, but trapped woman, ripe for love with the right partner. But despite her performance, the intrigue, and the beautiful scenery, I was ultimately disappointed by Up at the Villa.
I give this one a marginal thumbs up, and especially because of Kristen Scott Thomas, who does such a good job of playing a public role and at the same time having a private agenda and then having a secret agenda. So she's working on three levels.
Roles within roles within roles.
Yes, she wants to marry Sir Edgar and be the First Lady of Bengal. She wants to have an affair. And she also was intrigued
She has to manage
by
all of her
this
own
charity work
feelings.
that she's doing with the Austrian refugee. And I like that, and I like the whole world of these people who are living right on the edge of the end of their world, because any moment now they're going to be arrested as enemy aliens.
Extinct.
And then Anne Bancroft, who is very good in this movie, is going to find that her whole world has collapsed. And at the same time, the advice she gives the young woman and the confession she makes about her own life are very well delivered.
But what about Sean Penn?
I was disappointed by Sean Penn here, except the only way you could defend him is that he would be kind of a crude American of that nature. You could say he is kind of like that, but I wasn't especially, and I love Sean Penn, I wasn't especially
I love
amazed by
Sean
this
Penn, too,
performance.
and I was actually surprised at how miscast he was here.
Okay, coming up later, Kim Basinger starts a new life in I Dreamed of Africa. Coming up next, Heather Graham tracks down her wandering husband in Committed.
I came to talk about our marriage.
Coming to theaters May 19.
What is it?
What is it?
We have a visitor.
You can discover a world that you've only imagined.
Come on, get the herd out of here!
Walt Disney Pictures presents Dinosaur, rated PG, coming to theaters May 19.
Have you ever heard of for better or for worse? Now, do you think that means for as long as you both shall live, or do you think that means for as long as you're both fun?
Heather Graham plays Jolene, a character who's ready for her wedding day and a lifetime of commitment in our next movie, Committed. But she's in for a very big surprise as her husband, played by Luke Wilson, suddenly takes off on a quest to discover himself. Jolene believes marriage is for better or worse and tracks him down in El Paso, where she befriends Carl's new girlfriend, a waitress who has no idea that Carl is married.
I believe you. Okay, consciously, I didn't know he was married. But subconsciously, did I know? I don't know.
While Jolene keeps an eye on Carl, a sculptor played by Goran Vishnish keeps an eye on her.
What do you say, you come into my humble abode over there? It's messy, but it's, cozy, you know, sexy kind of messy.
I just told you I'm married.
Then Jolene's brother, played by Casey Affleck, flies out to keep an eye on his sister.
There are certain things that I really like about Carl, but I'm not sure that he's worth all of...
You think this is a question of worth?
No, I just mean that maybe...
What if Carl was confined to a wheelchair? What if he lost both his legs?
He's not in a wheelchair, Joe. I mean...
My big problem with Committed was that I felt like I'd arrived at the conclusion of the story about an hour before the characters did. If it wasn't for a strong supporting cast, including Mexican director Alfonso Arau as an old snake charmer, the second half of Committed would be even slower than it is.
You know, I would agree that there's a little bit of a lull two-thirds of the way through this movie, but I loved this film.
Really?
I thought it was a risky film. I thought it dared to say that in this world, the most adventuresome, outlandish choice a person could make is to be committed, is to take a leap of faith, and all of the magic that that entails. That's the journey she was on. I always love to be taken somewhere in a film, and this took us on an emotional journey.
That's the journey she was on. I mean, this is basically just a kind of dim-witted comedy. I mean, let's face it, it's not about committing to life in a serious drama.
This is a woman who takes the idea of commitment and the language of marriage very seriously and goes as far as she can, but she's no dope. She knows when to draw the line.
Yeah, but the director should have known where to draw the line and ended the film half an hour sooner, as far as I'm concerned.
And I also like Heather Graham.
This same director made Manny and Lowe, which is one of the best films I've seen in a long time, so she's very talented. But on the other hand, this one just seemed to me to have one idea and have it over and over and over again.
I thought it went exactly where it needed to go, and I thought Heather Graham was perfectly cast, very joyful, very vulnerable. I love the film. It felt very liberating to me. Coming up next, Kim Basinger faces the wilderness of Kenya in I Dreamed of Africa.
Wouldn't it be fun to make a new start in a new place?
Yeah.
Though her young son probably has no idea what she means, we are to understand that her dream will become reality in I Dreamed of Africa, a true story starring Kim Basinger as Kuki Gallman, a wealthy divorcee who marries Paolo, played by Vincent Perez, and leaves a privileged life in Italy for a more rugged and fulfilling existence in Africa. But soon after the family's arrival there, Paolo takes off with the boys on his own adventure.
What happened to checking out the ranch like you talked about?
Oh, come on. Look.
What?
No watch. Took it off when the plane landed in Nairobi, and I haven't put it on since. Things have a different rhythm here. You'll get used to it.
So I keep hearing.
They sporadically argue and make up until one night an elephant helps Paolo prove his point.
Get that all away! You maniac! You're insane!
Roy! No!
Try tomorrow. A different rhythm.
No!
Say it's a different rhythm!
The movie is a disjointed series of episodes, often pointless, that gather no dramatic momentum. All the while, Kim Basinger, who looks ravishing, never changes, though her rundown ranch eventually looks as though Martha Stewart was helicoptered in to redecorate. There are isolated scenes of power and beauty, but the screenplay leaves the actors stranded. I Dreamed of Africa is a shapeless catalog of events that dissipates the impact of what must have been an extraordinary real-life experience.
I'm in complete agreement with you, and I would go a little bit further. I do not want to sound politically incorrect, but where were the Africans? This movie does not take place in the 20s or 30s in Happy Valley, you know, the white mischief type period. This movie takes place in the 70s and 80s, when Africa, as we know by reading the papers, was a very different place. And these people seem to be living in some kind of dreamland where every once in a while she speaks a little Swahili to the foreman, and he goes off and disappears, and they lead their life without doing any work.
Well,
what do they do to support themselves?
I don't know. I don't know why they're there. They keep referring to some mission and how they're there, but we never understand why they're there. And there is one of those episodes with one of the tribes, and then nothing comes of it. They bring it up, and nothing comes of that.
It's a very disjointed film.
Yes.
Okay, next movie, and our next film is Sofia Coppola's haunting and mysterious The Virgin Suicide, which is told from the point of view of neighborhood boys who recall a summer 25 years ago when the 5 Lisbon sisters kept them all entranced. The Lisbon girls are great beauties, especially Lux, the most daring, who is played by Kirsten Dunst. Keeping an uneasy eye on their blooming daughters are Mr. and Mrs. Lisbon, played by James Woods and Kathleen Turner.
Peter, are you on the football squad?
No, I play, but I'm not actually on the team.
Ah. Oh, I see.
Not a team player.
Do you like to wrestle?
You okay? Josh Hartnett plays Trip Fontaine, a brave local boy who tells Mr. Lisbon he'd like to take his daughter to the dance.
You see, my wife and I have certain rules. They've been the same rules for the older girls, and I can't very well go and change them now for the younger ones. Even if I wanted to, the wife wouldn't let me.
Mrs. Lisbon has grave doubts, but finally, reluctantly, she relents.
We got white ones. We didn't know what you were wearing, and the guy, the flower guy, said that white would go with anything, so...
I'm glad you got white.
I think you can kind of guess the ending of The Virgin Suicides from its title, but you won't guess the tone or the mood of the movie. It reminded me of Picnic at Hanging Rock, another poetic film in which angelic young women disappear mysteriously from the land of the living. The movie is wise in not trying to explain reasons or motivations or being too literal. It simply evokes the sense of loss on the part of those boys and the narrator who speaks for them a quarter of a century later. Once they knew perfection, and then it was gone.
You know, and I wish that Sofia Coppola had been able to accomplish that sense of poetry in the film, but I felt that these women were sketched in very literally as characters, and so that begged the questions. You know, that asked, why did they do this? Their parents couldn't have, the way their parents behaved couldn't have explained their behavior. I mean, their parents were so terrible. I mean, she didn't really examine it from psychological or sociological reasons, and
well, you don't want
that's
her to.
okay.
You don't want psychological reasons.
So
At the
if you're
same
not
time,
going to go there, I think then you have to find a way to make it seem mystical and
I think
poetic.
they do.
And
I think they
it's
do
too
by
literal.
the fact that it's being thought back on over 25 years, and that at that time, what happened has now been turned into myth in the memories of these boys. The narrator is what makes this work, because of course, film makes things
Well, you
very
wanna know
literal. So
something?
the
I
film
almost
actually looks at these
forgot.
girls and sees them as flesh and blood, but we also see them in a different way.
I almost forgot there was a narrator, and that's how much the other story took over so much of the time. Maybe if the narrator had been more present, I would have had that sense of looking back.
I think the whole point of view of the film is the eyes of these boys. See, you're a girl, so you didn't think about the fact that the guys are thinking of things
Had it been an
too.
ode on budding female sexuality and how terrifying that is and the ways in which we want to repress
That would have been a
that's
different film.
interesting.
That's a different film.
It's also part of this film.
Okay, coming up next, my video pick is the best film of 1999, according to me anyway.
Roger Ebert in the Movies Video Pick of the Week is brought to you by Nestle Raisinets. At the movies or at home, Raisinets.
My video pick this week was a real easy choice for me. It's Being John Malkovich, which I thought was the best film of 1999, and now it's just out on video. This movie is so endlessly inventive that it seems to have 3 or 4 times more ideas than the average film. It stars John Cusack as a gifted but unpopular puppet master who in desperation takes a clerical job in a very peculiar office.
Welcome to Lester Corp. How may we meet your filing needs?
Behind a file cabinet, he finds a hole in the wall, and when he enters it, he discovers to his amazement that he is transported into the mind of the actor John Malkovich. After 15 minutes of vicarious celebrity, travelers into Malkovich's brain are dumped back into the real world, while meantime, Malkovich is extremely annoyed at the trespassing going on inside his cranium.
And we operate a little business here that stimulates for our clientele, well, the experience of being you, actually. Simulate? Yeah, after fashion.
Being John Malkovich was directed by Spike Jonze. It's some kind of a weird masterpiece, and it's my video pick of the week.
Alrighty, before we go on, I want to review last week's service. So let's go to tape. Nice, tight formation. Oh, sloppy pass, Michael. Very nice. Oops, it's all in the wrists. You break away too early. And pick up the pace of the left flank and into the end zone.
You know Sears, satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. Well, Sears Pest Control brings that same guarantee to your home. Sears service eliminates pests by thoroughly treating where bugs live and breed. And we guarantee you'll be satisfied or your money back. So when you're looking for pest control, call Sears, because there are lots of guarantees, but only one Sears satisfaction guarantee or your money back. Call Sears today. You'll be glad you did.
Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this week's show, and boy, did we have some disagreements. A big one on Gladiator. Joyce thinks it's one of the best movies she's ever seen. I thought it was shallow and murky. We split again on Up at the Villa. I liked the performance by Kristen Scott Thomas, but Joyce thought Sean Penn was hopelessly miscast. Another split on Committed with Heather Graham. Joyce thought the wife's faith was daring. I thought the film ran out of steam. 2 thumbs down for I Dreamed of Africa, a disjointed African saga starring Kim Basinger. And finally, another disagreement over The Virgin Suicides. I liked its haunting mystery. Joyce thought it wasn't haunting enough.
And to get back to Gladiator, I'll see you at Oscar time. I'm predicting Oscar nominations for Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, I'm sure it'll win 8 or 10 Oscar nominations, but that doesn't mean anything.
They will be deserved.
We have to have a higher standard than the Academy.
They will be deserved. My standards are right here.
Okay, remember you can hear our reviews on the web, Joyce and myself at Ebert-movies.com, part of Go Network. My print reviews are at suntimes.com/Ebert. Next week we'll be back with reviews of more new movies, including the sci-fi thriller Battlefield Earth starring John Travolta and a Hamlet with a contemporary edge starring Ethan Hawke. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.